Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about flat earth. Funny enough, I started this channel with the thought of debunking flat earthers and just didn't do a video until now. And for that I wanted to make up a little bit with a guy named Anthony Riley, aka Sleeping Warrior. He's pretty popular in the whole flat earth sphere, or I should say flat earth plane. And he just recently uploaded a video. And I thought maybe we could watch it together and kind of do a reaction video because it's a quick video to make. And I need that today because I'm tired. I don't know why, I cannot sleep. And I thought, why not watch some dumb people saying dumb stuff? And to understand the video he uploaded a few days ago, we have to watch a video he uploaded 1.5 years ago. So let's just dive in there.
Today's video is all about science.
Which I doubt, but okay.
Quality between the density of the egg equal to the density of the medium it's in. But what Nora says is, he equates cause with that which one manipulates. Well, your independent variable is the variable that is manipulated by the researcher in an experiment. It is the presumed cause.
Stop. The reason he's talking about this again is because they hasn't mentioned it here, but I think in this experiment, this video, they actually poured the salt in. So I think he's claiming you can change the density of the medium, and therefore that is the cause, or his independent variable is how much salt you've poured in. He hasn't mentioned this, of course, but I think that's actually what he's trying to get at. I mean, I know it seems insane what he's saying here about you have the control over the density, and but he actually means that that's because he's been pouring salt into it or not.
Yeah, exactly. You obviously do have the control over the density, but where's the connection from that to density is a force?
So far, what he said is true, and density isn't a force. Density is just the mass in a volume of an object. The force is buoyancy. But for buoyancy, you need gravity. And flat earthers don't believe in gravity. Because on a flat earth, gravity doesn't make sense. There is no center of mass where you can pull everything down. Because on a flat plane, the center of mass would be in the middle, and everywhere on that plane you would experience a different force acting on you. Or this plane should be accelerating with 9.8 meters per second squared up, and that wouldn't be very likely because in a very short amount of time you would be faster than light. So gravity doesn't make sense on a flat earth, which doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But here we are discussing this.
This is an egg. This is a parts per million counter. I decided that I could apply what he used, this little bit of technology, not science, this is technology.
Technology is science. I mean, the coat he's wearing, the glasses he's wearing, this device he's holding in his hands, the building he's in, that is science. Everything is science.
Apply this technology and I could perform a practical.
I've seen this video and it still gets me so worked out because I cannot understand why and how people can be so dumb. I really do. That's the reason why I'm so fascinated by all these flat earthers and space deniers and moon deniers and all of these idiots, because I just cannot fathom that there are people believing it, full on believing it, standing there trying to discuss with actual physics teachers and trying to tell them that they're wrong. I don't know what to say anymore.
practical scientific experiment where I could measure the density of a medium, in this case water, and I can make this egg move all by itself with just a little bit of salt. I can observe my phenomena to be that some objects appear to float, some objects appear to sink, some objects will suspend in different mediums. My hypothesis is if I change the medium's density, the egg will move. Newton said if an object moves, a force is present. My null hypothesis is that if I change the density of the medium, the egg will not move.
But that doesn't prove anything, because a hypothesis is an unproven explanation for a phenomenon, like a law of things appear to float or sink. The hypothesis should be, in your case, density is the only reason density is a force and the reason why things float or sink. What he's doing there is nothing of that. He doesn't have a hypothesis. He's just trying to tell you the two possible outcomes. It can float and it can sink. But your hypothesis should be the reason it does it.
This is my egg. This is my parts per million counter. This is going to measure the parts per million of both these fluids. This is tap water, regular tap water. That is the same tap water, but it's been preloaded to save some time with some salt from this to give it a density variation. It's going to measure the density of the tap water. Okay, that's coming in at 212 parts per million tap water. Don't know what that means. It's just a number. It could be unicorn farts. It's just a number. So 212 is the recorded density of this one. This one is saying this is 302 parts per million. Again, if you want to zoom into that, you can have a look. Okay. It sinks and it's touching the floor. It evenly distributes a little bit better. Because what I'm hoping to do is get the egg so that it's just sat above the bottom of the thing. Some people will argue and complain and say that I shouldn't have stirred it, I should have left it as a gradient. It doesn't really matter. Because what we're trying to establish is, if the medium is different, does it make a displacement? Does it force a displacement? If it forces a displacement, according to Newton, there is force. We can tell that the density of the egg is equal to the part in the glass where the liquid is. What I'm now going to try and prove is that if I change the density of the medium, I will cause the effect by adding salt.
Okay.
So if I can change it, because I'm the experimenter and I'm manipulating my presumed cause, my independent variable is the medium, that egg moves, I've caused it. We know the parts per million is about 300. All we need to do is pour some of this in. Hey, what do you know? The eggs immediately moved. Didn't have to wait for that, did we? So, what's the explanation? Well,
Buoyancy.
scientific method states that the independent variable is the presumed cause, and I presumed that changing the density of the liquid with salt would cause a displacement. Newton's first law of motion states that every object will remain at rest unless acted upon by a force, and I've obviously created a force.
Who decides what science is fine to use to disprove science and what not? Because they're just cherry picking stuff that they can prove their point with. The stuff that disproves their point, basically everything else that Newton said, they just ignore.
If you assert that gravity in any way caused something in this experiment, that means you are adding a secondary cause, adding by inference. If you add a secondary cause by inference, you fall outside of scientific method because you can't infer an extra cause when you've already got one that you've manipulated. You can't infer a secondary cause and remain within scientific method. If you wish to move outside of scientific method, sure, be my guest. Infer that gravity caused in any way whatsoever the effect that we just witnessed, which was the egg moving.
It is kind of density and gravity, because the force, buoyancy, is the function of the density of the fluid, the volume of the object, the egg in this case, and gravity. Because if gravity wouldn't be a thing, that everything falls down and floats up just because of density, you should be able to test it. And it is very easy. You can use a small kitchen scale, and you use a little ice cube and a big ice cube. If it's all just density and no other force acting on the ice cubes, they should weigh the same, because they're equally dense. But that's not what's happening because of gravity. And now let's watch the current video where he's referring to that one we just saw.
A few days ago, I released a couple of videos aimed at Bob Nodell from Globebusters, where I challenged him to a conversation, and I know that he won't have it, and I predicted it correctly in the video that he would not have the conversation. The reason is because Bob will not accept current science and scientific method.
So these two had a fallout. It's not that important, I guess. If it is important, because I until now couldn't be bothered to check what exactly happened, I will insert it anywhere on the screen. And if not, just they hate each other because they're dumb. That's it. All flat earthers have in a certain way different theory of Earth, because there are people that believe the solar system is as we know it, that every other planet or stellar body is round except Earth. Then there are other people who think that the surface of the flat Earth has a dome upon it, a firmament, and that space isn't real, stars aren't real, the sun is just 93 miles near us, and all of that stuff. The moon isn't real. They just basically disagree on everything. I think that's all you need to know.
Because when it applies against him, he ignores it because he wants to pontificate around pseudoscience as a flat earth pseudoscientist. It's been 18 months since I did my test with the egg, and it stood the test of time. There is not a single bowler that can challenge any part of this because they just don't like it. I demonstrated that if I manipulated the density of the medium, it caused an acceleration. The egg moved. Now, regardless of how you interpret it, the fact is that I did something and it caused something, right? And you can...
No! The fact that you didn't have a real hypothesis about the cause of it moving, because you think the hypothesis is that it moved, but that's just, yeah, I know. You have to interpret it, because what you did there is nothing. It's like I'm saying, okay, if I close the door, it's either open or close. That doesn't make any sense. The hypothesis should be, if I open the door, it either is warmer outside the door or colder. And then I say, why? That would make at least a little bit of sense. God, how, and why?
You can argue about exactly what it did and how it did it as much as you want. It doesn't matter. The point is that I caused it and it wasn't anything else causing it within scientific method. If you infer that gravity caused it, then we need a definition, and we all know that gravity...
The thing is, it is not another variable when you take gravity into account, because from the start to the beginning of his experiment, gravity was acting on the egg and the glass and the water. The only thing that changed is the density. That is true, because you can see it that way. If this was the egg and gravity will pull it down, And the density of the water around it, because you made it denser, pushes it a little bit up. And that is the buoyancy of the egg and not the density of the water. Density is not a force. And in the not salted water, the egg goes down because the gravitational pull is bigger than the buoyant pull upwards. So gravity is a variable that has been there from the beginning and it didn't change, but it's acting on the egg because density is not a force and buoyancy is, and buoyancy relies on gravity. You can calculate it yourself. You can predict all of those things. And until you come up with a calculation yourself, where we can see it, where you don't need gravity to exactly calculate things, and then you can do an experiment and prove your calculation. Then it can be a real hypothesis and maybe even a theory. But until then, you don't have a point.
I've only come across this today, but this is a fantastic video to demonstrate what actually happened. I do not have the skills to create these simulations, but I found this guy from somebody that was claiming to debunk me, and he didn't realise, because he doesn't realise what's going on here. But now I'm going to show it, because this guy demonstrates what happened with the egg test. Don't listen too much to this guy, because he thinks gas pressure. He thinks gas molecules follow curved trajectories because they're influenced by
So I am using this because it proves my point, but don't trust anything else, he says, because he disproves my point. That is the best example of confirmation bias. The same video, the same guy, he picks one cherry out and says, okay, everything else is a lie. How can he see it himself? This is just... Oh my god. Is he serious? Really? He can't be. He must be trolling, right? God.
My point is that as I increased the density of the medium, it caused pressure to increase against the sides of the container and on the underside of the egg, because we know that salt's more dense than the medium. It added more gradient, more density to the gradient, and that basically pushed up the gradient, and the egg moving up took the egg up with it. That's what happened. The egg moved because the pressure below it increased, and the pressure was caused by mass.
Buoyancy.
Let's have a look at a related phenomenon, namely buoyancy. Can our simple kinetic model maybe explain why some objects who have a lower density than the surrounding medium do not fall down like everything else does?
All solid objects in air are more dense than the air, guys. That's where this downwards bias perception comes from. This fact perceived by the human relative to the human only.
Why do fall things down then? Because when I let this fall, the air above it is less dense too than this object. Why doesn't it fly up? What force is it that this will fall down and not upwards or sideways? There is something. You can call it what you want, gravity or anything else. Something is acting upon this thing that when I let it loose, it will fall down. What is the reason that things fall down? And only down.
Rise in the medium. Here's another simulation with another empty sphere suspended in the middle of the gas volume.
German question mark?
And as we can see, it's a perfect exact match.
But this time the sphere can move freely. I assigned the sphere a mass such that its density matches the average density of the gas, which is why the sphere is suspended in the gas and neither falling nor rising. If you look closely, we can see that the sphere is indeed movable and is undergoing Brownian motion due to randomly being pushed by surrounding atoms. I can now reduce the sphere's mass by pressing a button, and in response, the sphere will rise towards the top of the container. Then I can press another button to increase the sphere's mass, and it will sink towards the bottom of the container. Neither of these behaviors are programmed into the simulation, which still only follows the 3 simple rules I explained in the beginning. Gradient in the gas, which in turn follows from the 3 rules. There are more atoms pushing against the sphere and pushing harder from the bottom than there are atoms pushing against it from the top. The result is a net force differential pointing upwards. If that force differential is exactly matched by the sphere's weight, the sphere stays stationary. If it exceeds the force differential, the sphere drops, and if the sphere's weight is less than the force differential, the sphere rises. That was all. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.
Oh, that was beautiful. So he demonstrated just by changing the mass of the sphere, it caused an acceleration, right? But remember, current physics states that mass is not an acceleration. Mass does not have a vector or a magnitude, it is simply a scalar. So just by changing something that has no vector, no direction, no magnitude, an acceleration occurred. And he literally explained why. It is a change in the net force differential caused by pressure.
Yeah, net force. There is the change in the net force differential. Because again, buoyancy, the function is density of the fluid, the water with the salt, times the volume of the object, the egg, times gravity. And if you add everything up and calculate it, you will end up with a positive force. Either it will be when used normal water, the positive force will be gravity pulling it down. With the change in density of the salt water, you will have a positive buoyant force. So it can either go up or it will hover in the middle. And that will be the case when it is equal. When every force is cancel itself out with another force, it can hover in the middle.
Just by changing the mass, he caused something to accelerate or to move, right? Mass isn't meant to do that. Bob from Globebusters, your position is
Mass is meant to do that in combination with gravity, regardless if you believe in it or not. You don't have a better explanation, you don't have a point. Easy as that. And I know you think you have a good explanation, but you don't.
untenable. You are not pushing science, you're pushing pseudoscience. There is no downwards direction, there is no bias. The perception of the bias is created by the density of the mass in question.
You can't explain something, you don't have a cause for something, you can't calculate something, you can't show me any equations. Then shut up!
Relative to the medium, and your perception is false because you don't understand that all solids are more dense than the medium. If you're a blurther, you think that this is all nonsense, right? Yet you ignore the demonstration, you ignore the definitions within scientific method, you ignore that gravity didn't do anything because if it can't by definition, yet you insist that it could. The blurthers are more dumb than Bob, but Bob, there is no downwards acceleration bias, and if there was, it doesn't accelerate matter. What does accelerate matter is relative density, and if something's in disequilibrium, pressure moves it, and that's what I demonstrated. Stop pushing pseudoscience, Bob, you're causing damage.
The only one causing damage is you and your friend, Nathan Oakley. So just you guys know what I'm talking about. He and his friend are the ones who condone hitting a child. Because Nathan did this on a live stream. He hit his own child. I don't remember how old his child was, but he did it on a live stream, on fucking camera. He hit his child. He got humongous backlash, even from his own friends. And Anthony here stood there on camera and said, well, it's his child. It's his method of parenting. I think it's okay. What the actual fuck? There's no, and I repeat, there's no circumstance where it's okay to hit your child. Because this child was a toddler. And it's not okay. It's disgusting. No one should support someone that hit his child. I know it's been a long time, but Anthony, who is the one causing damage by promoting such shit? But pseudoscience is less damaging than the bullshit you talk about. Especially this fucking video that has proven nothing except that you're an idiot. And that is all I have today. I hope you had a good time, because I did. It was very fun. It was my first video where I haven't had a script written down or anything. I just winged it. I think at some points you can tell. Maybe I can edit that out, but either way, leave a like and subscribe. Turn on the bell notifications, because I don't know, YouTube. And I hope I will see you in the next one. Thank you guys for watching. Bye!